All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much to everyone who came this morning to hear from us. My name is Christina Hansen, and I am the Executive Director of Part of the Solution, which is also known as POTS. And welcome so much to our 2024 Breakfast Forum, which is focused on economic opportunity for all in New York City. POTS's Breakfast Forum is an annual opportunity that we take to speak about the most relevant topics and initiatives that impact our community in depth. This format allows us to highlight the work of other nonprofit organizations that work fighting poverty and hunger and other government agencies as well. We also are able to present what we hear from our clients that we serve daily about their experience in New York City. As I'm sure everybody on this call can agree, New York City is a really incredible and vibrant place. It's an economic engine for our state. It's an economic engine for our nation. It's a hub of cultural and intellectual activity. But unfortunately, the experience in New York City is not consistent for everyone. New York has some of the most extreme wealth inequality in the nation and, in fact, in the world. And many face barriers to accessing economic opportunity through employment and entrepreneurship. The Bronx alone has nearly 400,000 people who live at or below the poverty line, which is about $26,000 for a family of three. And nearly 80% of Bronx residents do not have enough income to meet their basic needs. At Part of the Solution, we welcome more than 34,000 clients every single year who come to us facing these types of challenges, finding a reliable source of income, able to buy the food that they need, retain affordable housing. And we work to make sure we have a swift response to these critical needs. We have food programs that provide food on a daily basis. We have shower male haircut programs where you can come and access those services. So we want to address those immediate needs. But we also work to and have been growing our ability to work with clients to move them along the scale from that crisis to stability and self-sufficiency. And we are seeking to understand and act on some of the root causes of poverty in our city. So today, we are going to focus on some important initiatives around that issue, both pathways for employment and entrepreneurship here in New York City. Our speakers, they both focus on the financial empowerment of underserved communities. It's my pleasure to welcome today both of our panelists. We have David Correas, Executive Director of Outreach and MWBE Recruitment at the New York City Department of Small Business Services, and Gregory J. Morris, Chief Executive Officer of the New York City Employment Training Coalition. Without further ado, I'm going to give the floor to our speakers to introduce themselves and the incredible work they're doing. And David, I'm going to start with you this morning.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and thank you all for letting me have this platform to be able to speak about SBS, New York City Department of Small Business Services, and all of our resources to help business owners start, operate, and grow, as well as our job seekers to be able to navigate through their job career search and the resources that we have available. So really looking forward to presenting in a couple of minutes.
And good morning, happy Friday. I'm Greg Morris. I'm the CEO of the New York City Employment Training Coalition. I'll talk a little bit about the coalition when I dig into the presentation because it connects, I think, to where it is and where we're going and how we can all stand together to be able to ensure that folks have access to good jobs, good opportunities, and the success they need to succeed in New York City. It's great to see so many familiar faces. Welcome to Workforce Development Month as well. It's great to see everybody for that.
Great. Thank you, David. You can start your presentation.
Well, thank you all so much. And to reintroduce myself, David Correas, Executive Director of Outreach and MWBE Recruitment with New York City Department of Small Business Services. And here today, what we want to do is we want to highlight, a couple of different resources that are really focused on helping you start your business as well as, take advantage of the different business support, the different workforce support services that are available to help you launch your career path. To let you know a little bit about New York City Department of Small Business Services, the New York City Department of Small Business Services helps unlock economic potential and create economic security for all New Yorkers. And we do that three different ways, right? By connecting New Yorkers to good jobs, building stronger businesses, and building thriving neighborhoods across the 5 boroughs. Even in today's presentation, it's not exhaustive of what SBS does, right? Because we have so many resources that are out there when we focus on the different pathways. But here we're going to be focusing on two major cornerstones, right? In terms of starting and operating your business, as well as going through the different workforce services that we have out here, especially here in the Bronx. As a Bronx native, right? We have centrally located, strategically located business solution centers that are there to help you provide those business support services, whether you're looking to formulate your business plan, help you take advantage of the different resources that are out there. The great thing, especially in the Bronx, the business solution centers and our Workforce One centers co-located on the corner of Fordham and Webster Road. So if you're familiar with the area, you could always go down there to be able to take advantage of those business resources that are showing on up. And here you're just seeing a wide range of different things that we're showing on up, whether it's the education and training, legal assistance, access to capital. And we'll provide a deeper dive when it comes to those different things as well. When it talks about education and training, we have a lot of we have such a robust calendar when it comes to navigating through different types of topics that are out there, whether it's even first steps to even start a business, thinking through, what might be a game plan for you and for your business, thinking through how to even go through search engine optimization when it comes to building up a marketing plan to make your business as visible as possible. Other forms of education and training also come in through business services overviews, like what we're doing today, or even providing in-depth conversations when it comes to navigating through the city's procurement process, when it comes to participating in city's minority and women-owned business enterprise program, or so many more different topics that are out there. I always say, as an actionable step for any of our business owners, any of our community partners, take advantage and follow SBS on the Eventbrite page, because you get to see all the different topics and in different languages out there as well. When we talk about, even support services to help you ramp up your business, here we want to highlight the Fast Track program. Essentially, this is a boot camp style type of program where essentially it goes from, converting your idea to a concept and coming up with actionable steps, right? With this 10-session program, you're essentially walking out with a business plan. You're building up actionable steps for you and for your business. And in that process as well, right, you're thinking through who your audience is, what this, is the idea that you're looking to have. Can you monetize that idea? A lot of different pathways for you to be able to take advantage of these different resources. And even though I don't have a dedicated slide here, I definitely also want to highlight the legal support services, the pro bono legal support services that we have available for our business owners who are looking to understand what might be the best legal structure for them and for their business as well. When we talk about some of the different pressure points when it comes to formulating and operating your business, we're going to focus on a couple different topics as well, right? So things like access to capital. Each of our business solution centers have subject matter experts, finance account managers who can walk you through the different options when it comes to access to capital partners, right? These finance account managers were so instrumental when it comes to responding to pandemic of COVID-19, or even afterwards when it comes to identifying different forms of capital vehicles that are available for you and for your business, helping you complete your application, providing that support service as well in terms of navigating through what might be the best option for you and for your business. SBS, we have a network of over 40 different lenders when it comes to capital access providers, and that includes traditional lending institutions, community development financial institutions, and micro lenders as well. A lot of resources to take advantage of those things. And especially if you're always on the run, we also have this awesome funds finder that you could also navigate and take advantage of and find those different resources electronically as well. When we also talk about operating and running your business as well, one thing we also want to highlight as well is the New York City Business Express Service Team, or NYC Best. This is such a powerful intervention. Within the last 2 years, we've been able to save New Yorkers and jobs and business owners over $35 million in potential fines and penalties. And that's working capital that they get to keep for them and their business and operate their business. The great thing about NYC Best, there's two different parallels and pathways with this. Not only do we have small business advocates who can help you navigate through working with 11 different regulatory agencies and authorities, but we also have compliance advisors who are former inspectors themselves that could provide free education and training, can do a site inspection, purely educational to help you troubleshoot and see where there might be potential areas of fines and penalties for you and for your business, as another way to be able to help operate your business a whole lot quicker and make sure that you're keeping your working capital in your pockets. In that same breath, especially as we look to expand and grow our business as well, we also want to highlight our commercial lease assistance program, where we have attorneys who are subject matter experts in commercial real estate, where not only they can help you navigate through signing a commercial lease, right, understanding the rules and regulations and terms and conditions that people are getting signed up for, amending and renewing your lease when it's time to renew your lease, as well as handle simple landlord-tenant issues. Very powerful tool to take advantage of when it comes to identifying a commercial space and operating your business. And then I wouldn't, I wouldn't be living up to my title if I didn't talk about MWBE recruitment as well. The city, when we talk about the complexity of the city spends over $40 billion to operate and run the city of New York, especially when we talk about the city's Minority and Women-Owned Business Enterprise Program. This is such a powerful program because we're finding ways to tap into the tax dollars that we're using, that we're paying on a day-to-day basis to be able to operate and run, and leverage those tax dollars to be able to work with our minority and women-owned businesses to carry out different support services, whether it's professional services, whether it's construction, standard services, or goods. Very powerful tool. We have over 11,000 actively certified MWBE firms. And this is such a powerful, not only is it with respect to the city's MWBE certification program, we have support services to help you complete your certification, as well as support services to help you monetize the certification and selling to government resources that are out there as well. And then especially when we take a look at all the different resources, because this is not meant to be exhaustive of what SBS does, but I would say definitely take advantage of the My City Business Portal. If we go to nyc.gov/business, you get to see all the different resources that are out there. I use that as my North Star, especially when I'm connecting and working with our small business owners, especially to be able to connect support services, whether it's through mentorship, whether business preparedness and resiliency, a lot of other things that we didn't touch upon today. But when we also talk about job seekers, right, we also want to highlight our network of Workforce One development centers. With the city of New York, we are the city's workforce arm, and we operate 18 Workforce One centers throughout the 5 boroughs. And these are great support services when it comes to recruitment services, connecting to training, finding, job search resources, getting the support services in terms of career advisement, skill building services. Some areas of focus or areas of targeted populations include veterans who are transitioning out of active service, justice-involved New Yorkers, foreign-born New Yorkers, out of work, out of school New Yorkers, people with disabilities. We have some centers that actually provide specific support services. And here, to focus a little bit more on the Priority One program, as well as our Employment Works programs, where we're helping targeted populations to be able to connect them to provide that nuanced support when it comes to being a job seeker. Another thing that we also want to highlight is also sector-based training, right? So whether it's food and hospitality, healthcare, industrial and construction. 2 of the programs that we want to highlight here is like the Apprentice NYC and the HVAC pre-apprentice program, where they're accepting applications and they're providing a lot of information sessions out there as well. And then here's some other support services or some other areas of targeted education and training includes healthcare training through the NCLEX program, where if you're an internationally trained nurse, you can leverage your expertise from home and be able to transition it to a healthcare paying job out here. And then also we want to highlight the First Course New York City program. We'll speak to this a little bit later on, but this is a fantastic program, especially if you're looking to get into the restaurant industry and the food industry. Very powerful program in terms of providing education and training and jumpstarting your career through hands-on training through fantastic partners. And then also when we talk about personal access to capital, being able to highlight to our partners at the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection, all the financial empowerment centers where they can provide individualized coaching and counseling sessions to help you navigate through basic financial capital needs that are needed, whether it's banking accounts, credit repair, a lot of different conversations that are out there. The last slide I'll show out here is how to stay connected with SBS, and I'll put my contact information here in the chat as well, but definitely follow us on all the different platforms that we have out here. And then also, in case you want to tap into any of these resources, we want to highlight our hotline, 888-SBS4-NYC. So thank you all so much. I'll be here, and I'm happy to answer any questions later on. Thank you all so much. I'm gonna stop sharing now.
Thank you so much, David. I really appreciated all of the details you gave. Obviously, the Small Business Services Division is doing a lot of work, and so making it so that we can better connect our clients to all those different types of services will be really important. Now I'd like to give the floor to our second panelist, Gregory Morris. Thank you so much for joining us today, and why don't you let us know what you have to say?
Can you see my screen okay? Is it kind of okay? Good morning, everybody. It's great to see you all. I want to congratulate and express my gratitude to POTS for making it possible to put this conversation or be part of this conversation, this forum. And I want to use this opportunity to do three things, really. I want to tell you a little bit about what the coalition is and what the coalition does, because I think it has a direct impact and value in this conversation about how folks work towards opportunities to find economic stability and success in New York City. And then I want to talk a little bit about kind of where the city is, because I think there's something very important representing an organization that's connected to policy and advocacy, but also networking and connections between workforce development providers and employers. I think it's important to get a little snapshot as kind of where the city is right now. And then I'll kind of land on some of the strategies moving forward that I think we have to take on as a city to be able to address, I think, significant needs and barriers that I think the folks who are on this call are aware of in terms of creating equity, to ensuring inclusivity and accessibility, and obviously the ability for New Yorkers to be able to succeed in New York. So I'll do those three things. And let me just say too, happy Friday, everybody. Happy September. It's Workforce Development Month as well. That is actually a national thing for those of you in the workforce development space. And if you have your hands in human services, social services, if you're part of the philanthropic community or the business community, you are thinking about workforce development. It's Workforce Development Month. We can acknowledge that and celebrate that, hopefully, because there's lots of amazing things that happen in New York City to be able to put folks on good paths to success. And by the way, you're going to hear me talk about the city's success and some challenge as I do this. And that is, I think, real because it's based on data and experience and the experience of the providers that we work with. But it's also related to my understanding of how hard it is to have a city that is successful as we want it to be. Shout out to the SBS folks. I have great relationships with Small Business Services, and again, David, it's great to share this space with you because I think it's the tag team, the workforce development providers in association and connection with government, public services that can allow for more New Yorkers to do better. The coalition that I represent is 25 years old. NYC ETC plays an important role in advancing policy priorities, and all for the purpose of seeking to reduce barriers to, or increase access to employment, reduce barriers to employment. Our coalition connects New Yorkers to quality jobs, living wages, and services. And when I talk about this coalition that I represent, essentially what I'm saying is there are 220 plus organizations in New York City that fall under the umbrella of the New York City Employment and Training Coalition, serving a couple 100,000 New Yorkers every year. The vast majority of those New Yorkers are folks of color. We're thought of as an intermediary in relation to that coalition. So we're a convener. We bring those folks together to talk about specific economic development opportunities or employer needs. We serve as an advocate, advocating for the needs borough by borough, neighborhood by neighborhood, industry by industry, population by population. We think about how to advocate for the policy needs, the budgetary, the legislative, the compliance or regulatory needs that those providers have to be able to help find some success. And we focus on industry. We build networks. We think about data. Think of us as in some capacity of connective tissue in trying to think about how it is that New Yorkers find good pathways forward. In terms of the population that our providers serve, primarily it's women, it's high school students, it's justice-involved individuals. And you can see some of that data here. And by the way, I know many of you are members of the coalition, so this might be familiar to you, but I always think it's good to sort of peel back the layers a little bit and give some additional clarity as to what we're doing and how. These coalition members, these workforce development providers that we represent are connected to industry in every capacity, but in particular, it's tech, construction, healthcare, food, and hospitality. Those are the main types of credentialing, training, job development opportunities that those providers are connected to and are working with New Yorkers to provide. And by the way, the providers that we work with, and those of you in the room know this, it could be folks seeking a first job. It could be folks seeking a second, third, fourth chance of success. It could be folks reskilling and upskilling. It includes higher education institutions. It includes singularly focused training organizations that only focus on one career. It includes multi-service, multi-generational not-for-profits as well. In the past year, we lead briefings and roundtables talked about this. We track kind of the investments that the city and state make in workforce development. We have an industry focus. We run a conference every year that brings the workforce development providers together. That'll happen in December. Hashtag Workforce Development Week. We're going to make it a week this year, and we hope everyone's involved. And we also do something called the Workforce Weekly, which is a regular communication that we put out to this universe of providers in New York City to talk about how it is, what's working, what funding opportunities are available, what pathways we're finding to get folks access to good jobs. We've put out a series of reports, many of those focused around the pandemic, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, and what the labor market has looked like, how folks are finding opportunity or not finding opportunity. I want to highlight this particular space as well here, that we represent this coalition of members, and they're in every borough and every neighborhood. And we actually have some dashboards that can help people understand and find out where the services, where the trainings are provided, where the credentials are available in different pockets of the city. This is particularly important as we think about the areas in New York City where there is planned economic development, there are employment opportunities, and the pockets of New York City where there is under-resources, under-investment. Last but not least, just in terms of what we do or how we think about it. We seek to serve New York City and New York State by advancing budgetary, legislative, regulatory needs. We try to act as a resource with employers and intermediaries, and we seek to be a voice. What we see ourselves as is a backbone of the city's economic success. We see workforce as that backbone, and we seek to champion that. So whether it's New Yorkers who are part of the economy today or seeking in the future, we think folks do better when they have access to the skills and resources they need and the education and training platforms that they need to be able to find good pathways and good jobs. That's what we believe in. That's what we stand for. But the highlighted segment of this particular piece, and what I'll talk about in the next 2 or 3 minutes, is there are too many systemic barriers for too many New Yorkers to have a truly inclusive economy. If you've been following the news, switching over to just kind of where we are right now. If you've been following the news, this is an administration right now, and I didn't put this is the actual poster, by the way. I didn't scribble on it by any stretch. This is the actual poster from the Adams administration about how it is that they have championed and focused on workforce development, job opportunities in New York City. And as the Community Advisory Committee, when I saw the Potts Community Advisory Committee communications, as this community has talked about, while on one hand, we are hearing good news about job opportunities, the bounce back from the pandemic, the investment in hiring halls and bringing employers together, we're also seeing gaps, meaning on the ground, folks are saying, I'm not able to find pathways. And New Yorkers who in some cases had the hardest time finding pathways are continuing to struggle to find those pathways. That's real. And behind those numbers, if you look underneath the hood a little bit on these numbers, as we like to do in our organization, if you look at some of this data, it's important to sort of pause here and just take a look at where we are as a city. This is from the New York City Economic Development Corporation. If you notice at the very top of this piece of data, pre-COVID to COVID, the number of job postings are down. Not surprising. That's that first bar that's up at the top. You can see the unemployment rate still sitting at 5%, still not where it was pre-COVID level. But if you start scanning down, you can see how unemployment impacts different communities in different ways. Shout out to the Adams administration, because I think they can champion that Black unemployment rate has gone down, but it's still 2+ times what white unemployment is. And that's a challenge for us as a city that requires investment, focus, and drive to be able to change and execute on, to see the needle move in significant ways. I also want to highlight this segment from the Office of the Comptroller. This is a report that comes out on a monthly basis. This is the July report. Where are the jobs is the question. If jobs are coming back in the city, where are those jobs? Well, those jobs are in healthcare and social assistance. That accounts for the greatest gain. Some pockets of educational services and construction too, but mostly it's healthcare and social assistance. It's the healthcare human services pathway that's employing people right now. What's great about that? Those are critically important jobs for folks to be able to take care of our city. The downside is it tends to be statistically true that those jobs don't get the wages that they need to have to be able to take care of New Yorkers. And in particular, it's women who are impacted. This report from Women Creating Change about closing the gender pay gap tells you a little something about that particular category. If you look at that care workers category, that's 10% of New York City is focused on that particular job category. 83% of that 10% are women. So that particular slice of what it is that it means to find jobs in New York City, the increase in jobs in New York City are pathways where folks do not have the wages. And in particular, that falls disproportionately on women. I also want to note for you this. The overlooked and under counter report, the true cost of living report that United Way and the Fund for the City of New York did, talked about how it is that at this particular moment in our city's history, 50% of working age New Yorkers are struggling to cover their basic needs. And when they looked at the specific data in terms of householders and jobs, they could see where it was that folks who were struggling the most were landing. And you could see it's in the healthcare space, disproportionately impacting women who are struggling to find a foothold, not surprisingly, in pathways to employment and opportunity. The New York City Employment Training Coalition is focused on the idea of good jobs and quality jobs. When we talk about jobs, there's the idea of a good job, which is meeting basic needs. And those basic needs and what those mean, not just the idea that I have a good wage and a schedule I can work within, but it should be about creating a motivated workforce. We also talk about quality jobs. And quality jobs are about diversity in recruitment and hiring. It's about good wages and benefits. It's about an accessible workplace. It's about building. The reality of this particular moment in time in New York City's history is that while it is true that we've seen a bounce back in jobs, the jobs are neither exactly good jobs or quality jobs at this particular moment. And disproportionately, Black and brown New Yorkers, disproportionately, it's women who are seeing that impact. The training providers that we work with, and the reason why we are focused on a policy and advocacy conversation in support of this coalition of folks who do workforce development, is that we want to see your work result in job opportunities that are going to result in better wages, better benefits, and quality job opportunity. This is my last note, and I will end here to say this. As we know right now, and as was noted in the community advisory communications that I started, community advisory committee communications, the issues that are popping up that are undercutting our ability to help folks find pathways to good jobs. In my next segment, when I come back, I'll tell you the strategies that we're undertaking that we hope you jump on board with us to address are things related to childcare being a significant demand that is causing challenge. The benefits cliff, folks who are on benefits reaching a certain point where they can't take a full-time job because if they do, they lose access to their benefits. The absence of industry sector partnerships, the cost of transportation, and the absence of measurement and statistics, the underperformance of our community colleges. It's those elements that are keeping us from being able to build the scaffolding to elevate more New Yorkers into meaningful jobs, not just now, but as we look towards the future, 2030 and beyond. I think the coalition has a key role in that. Those of you who participate in working on it with us, we're thrilled about that. And we do that, of course, in alignment and partnership with everything that SBS and others bring to the table, because it takes a full ecosystem for the New York to find success in the job economic development space. And I'll pause there.
Thank you so much, Greg. Yes, and thank you so much for bringing up the complexity and the interconnectedness of all of these issues. There's a huge network of people working on this around the city. You made reference a couple of times to our Community Advisory Committee, so this is a chance for everybody now on the call who's going to get to hear from them. We like to use the Breakfast Forum to provide a space for our clients and communities' voice to be heard by the broader public. And today I am going to introduce a short video made up with contributions from our Community Advisory Committee, and it's will be presented now.
My name is Angela Quintana Lee, and I am part of the Advisory Committee here at POTS.
Mi nombre es Marisol Guamán y soy miembro del comité de POTS.
Mi nombre es Berenice Alcántara y soy miembro del comité.
Mi nombre es Lidia López y yo soy miembro del comité de POTS.
No es buena la estabilidad financiera porque no hay trabajo, no hay suficientes trabajos, no hay suficientes oportunidades para que la gente pueda trabajar y de eso ahorrar, tener para una emergencia, para sus gastos, pagar las cuentas.
In my opinion, the state of financial stability in my community is very poor. We still have families that are struggling to just make ends meet.
En mi barrio la estabilidad financiera no es buena. En el Bronx en lo general califico que es lo mismo, porque no hay oportunidad de trabajo.
Yo cocinaba 30 lonches más o menos y salía a distribuirlo, pero yo iba a Home Point, donde tenía que dar mucho trabajo para yo poder vender 2 o 3 platos de comida.
If you really want to work, my belief is that there's something out there for you. You just have to get up and find work. There's not a lot of positions, obviously, that pay well. Thus the reason why it's really difficult to make ends meet in a household. Even if you have a partner.
En materia de empleo, yo veo que el empleo está muy por debajo, porque había muchas personas que estaban buscando trabajo y no encontraban lo que hacer.
No hay. Y quizás son las más accesibles a los supermercados, a la bodega. Son las más accesibles, por lo menos en la comunidad mía.
Pienso que al no tener las personas un permiso de trabajo, no podrían conseguir el trabajo, ganar lo que es justo y poder pagar y ayudar pagar las cuentas y ayudar a su familia.
En mi experiencia con adolescentes, pues yo tengo hijos adolescentes, para ellos se les dificulta porque van a muchos sitios y lo que le dicen, oh, llena y vuelve después. No le dan oportunidad, no lo llaman, le dicen, llama este número y cuando llaman no puede, nadie le contesta. Sí hay la oportunidad, pero el sistema te limita. Y no tanto el sistema, sino que a veces uno no cuenta con los recursos para emprender.
Here in the city of New York, there's programs that are available to whoever wants to start a business. You just need an idea, and you can go to any city organization and they can help you develop your business.
A mí me gustaría empezar ese negocio porque ese negocio que a mí toda la vida me ha gustado cocinar. Yo como emprendedora, si yo hubiera tenido la oportunidad de una buena ayuda, eso hubiera sido mi trabajo.
Si yo puedo invertir un cierto capital, comenzar con algo tan sencillo y voy creciendo y voy mejorando las ventas, sigo creciendo, sería un emprendimiento que me satisface a mí y que puedo ayudar a mi familia y tal vez en un futuro a la comunidad.
Que haya más personas que empujen el emprendimiento de otras personas. Como mencioné anteriormente, tanto en lo económico como en el apoyo.
I also feel that training for people who want extra training so that they can enhance their position in their career would be helpful. Free training, free English classes, and more places in the community that people can go to sharpen their resume and to make themselves more marketable in maybe other jobs.
Que haya muchas fuentes de trabajo, que todas las personas tengan oportunidades, bueno, como decía anteriormente, permisos para que todos podamos trabajar legalmente y con eso podamos ganar lo justo y ayudar al país.
Seguimos ayudando en nuestra comunidad como está POS para poder seguir adelante luchando por la vida.
I want to thank Angela, Berenice, Lydia, and Marisol for providing their experiences with us. Our Community Advisory Committee works with us. They tell us about obstacles in the community, but they're also focused on finding solutions that work. And they are working along with us as we expand our services to provide more access to economic opportunity for our clients. And they help us provide key insights for our advocacy for underserved communities. One of the primary program pillars for part of the solution is our long-term stability program. And this program connects clients with mentoring and training opportunities that will allow them to find better living conditions that will ultimately break the cycle of poverty for them and their children. Regarding economic opportunity through employment, we have recently opened a second location on the Grand Concourse, very close to this office that David mentioned at Grand Concourse and Fordham Road. And we have a classroom in that space, and we've been able to increase the level of impact that we have, not only through improving our English as a second language program, but also through partnerships, most predominantly our partnership with the HOPE program. And that partnership has already graduated 62 students since we began it, with soft skills, technology training, necessary licenses, and improving people's employability and skills. Those 62 clients wouldn't have had access to the program without that space, without this partnership. And I think we brought it directly into this community that has a great need for that training. We have new cohorts starting on Monday. Also, the CAC discussed entrepreneurship. And in addition to see what you see in the video, many in the CAC really believe that there are opportunities for entrepreneurs in this city, but the capital to start a business is not accessible to them, or they're afraid of the financial responsibility to pay loans. That is just a small subset of our community. In order to learn a little bit more, we surveyed 80 members of our 80 clients, and I just wanted to present a few pieces of information that are a result of that survey. So we asked people whether or not they rely on financial assistance, and a not surprising answer was that 70% of those who we surveyed do rely on that. And we see that many people who come to us need assistance to meet their basic needs, like staying in housing, like affording food. And this is a major challenge that our city faces. So part of the reason why this reliance on financial assistance is partly because of this lack of access to some of the economic opportunities. So we spoke to our clients about their employment status. More than half of our clients we've found to be unemployed. And while 36% did have traditional employment, only about 11% of those people had full-time employment. So many people, if they can access employment, aren't necessarily getting the hours that they're looking for. Additionally, if you look a little bit more deeply into the data, POTS serves a lot of people who prefer to communicate in Spanish, either do not know English or don't feel strongly capable of communicating in English. And within that population, we found an even lower employment rate and also a lower access to full-time work. And that's one barrier that we see in our community, which is access to learning, being comfortable in English in our city, despite the fact that there are many languages spoken. From an employment perspective, you have many more opportunities if you can speak English. Other barriers that our staff have reported when working with clients seeking employment are just figuring out all of the different systems. There is a constantly changing ways to apply to jobs. I want to say with different types of technology, different types of places to look for work, using during the pandemic, there's suddenly all of this, there's like text message and Zoom calls and all of that stuff. And people just navigating all of these different systems is extremely challenging. Also, many do not regularly use some of these systems like email to communicate with potential employers. Some of the other things that we've heard is, of course, that childcare is a common barrier to employment. The cost of childcare in New York City is extremely high, and a lot of our clients cannot make enough as an employee to cover those costs. Also, we see that interviewing skills are a challenge. A lot of people in our community are not accustomed to speaking about themselves with confidence in a way that you need to in a hiring situation. People also lack networks to access positions. And then finally, a major challenge that we see often in our slightly older population, not old, but older, is that as work and other disabilities can, harm people's bodies over their lifetimes, if their skill set is in physical work, making that transition away from physical work to manage their disabilities is something that we've seen as a challenge. We asked our clients about interest in entrepreneurship, and very many aspire to own their own business. It's a very entrepreneurial entrepreneurial population that we serve here at POTS. And I actually often myself hear from clients about their interest in having either a for or a nonprofit business. People will see me as leading a nonprofit enterprise and ask me about how to get it started. They want to start nonprofits to help their community members, to help their neighbors. Is an extremely strong desire in our community. Some barriers to this include, you able to use technology, especially for marketing the business. I noticed that David mentioned that the New York City Small Business Services does provide some assistance on figuring out how to do search engine optimization and all of those types of things that now you need to do for starting a business. But the larger barrier in our community is often access to capital. Many don't have access to lending. There's really not a lot of banks that are going to lend to small businesses in our community. And people also don't necessarily have their own savings. So we asked our clients about what kinds of savings that they have and found that only 29% have more than $100 in savings, which is destabilizing just from a general life perspective, but also if you're considering starting a business, having that kind of savings makes it a much harder challenge and a much bigger risk. We talked to people about the types of industries that they're interested in starting businesses in, and for the most part, we saw food, sales, and beauty as being the primary business areas that our clients were looking at starting businesses. Some people already have sort of small things where they do here and there, but are unable to sort of grow them beyond just a home industry. Now, I would love to just follow up with our panelists after having this presentation from the CAC and of the data from our community. I'm going to start with Greg. So the New York City Employment Training Coalition is a really powerful force for advocacy and improving our workforce training systems in New York City. If you could share some key focus areas for your advocacy and then talk about how all of us on this call can take action on these issues.
Thanks so much, and I appreciate being teed up in this way, and got some conversation going on in the chat as well, as folks have prompted some questions, and I'll follow up with those or incorporate them as best I can in this case. Let me say a couple things just as a starting point. From my perspective, the intersection of jobs and access to good food and stable housing in an individual's lifetime, an individual New Yorker's lifetime, or in a moment in time, I should say, is a pathway to stability. But that's not economic security. And when we talk about workforce development, and when we talk about workforce development, partially what we mean is it's the intersection of how it is that jobs, that part of that picture related to jobs, food, and housing, how we talk about jobs. And talk about jobs related to workforce development means there is an employment opportunity for me, regardless of my current position, regardless of whether it's a first, second, or third chance. It's a position that I can enter. It's a position that I can feel successful at. If I'm not successful there's something I could transition to. There's a pathway to career development. And important to note here that when we talk about workforce development, we know it's not enough to talk about writing a good resume. We've got to talk about it from the perspective of, as was identified by Christina, the notion that someone has to feel comfortable and confident in an interview process, that they have to have developed the social networking capability and connections to be able to get their foot into the door, into a job opportunity, a new industry. It also means our employers have to create the opportunity for folks to find success. I've had some very significant conversations as an intermediary with employers of large entities and institutions who have talked about, in some cases, not wanting to take the risk of hiring someone who came from a job training program because that person doesn't have the traditional credentials that they think someone could or should have for a specific role. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know or see. I just want to emphasize this. This audience in this room right now understands workforce development in ways that I would suggest it's probably unlikely in some cases that our elected officials do, in some cases that philanthropy does, in many cases how employers do. And so when I say that, what I mean to say is we have a job, as I get into the policy and advocacy strategies, we have a job to talk about what workforce development means. It means more than just getting someone job ready. We know it means there's supportive services or retention services. There's contextualized learning opportunities. There's access to childcare. The elements are in place so folks can find and continue to have success. But remember, if the employer on the other side of that, as was noted in the chat, if the employer on the other side of that is not willing to open its doors, if that employer isn't committed to diversity, equity, inclusion, if it's not committed to accessibility, it's going to continue to be true that New Yorkers that have found success will find success, and those who have not will continue to not find success. This city is particularly skilled and good, I would suggest, at job training opportunities, meaning that there's good training going on. But how many times is it a provider tells to me we run a great training program, but we don't have any employers who are hiring our people? Well, that means we've got to remake and rethink the particular system. I also want to add to you this. We're particularly good in the city at making new things, in some cases, as opposed to building our scaffolds. And part of what I'll talk about in the policy and advocacy sort of space is to say to you, we can put money into innovative opportunities. We can see a piece of success in Red Hook. We can see a piece of success in Morrisania. We can see a slice of success in East Harlem. We can see it on the North Shore of Staten Island. But until our city sees its shared success going forward, I think we'll continue to see our neighbors, especially in under-resourced, underserved communities, continue to struggle. Just one other note for you, for what it's worth. There's no question in my mind at this moment that the talent exists to be able to solve a lot of our challenge in the workforce development ecosystem. The fragmentation or disconnection, the idea that there are good things happening, as I mentioned, in some pockets, but not in others. There's nothing wrong, by the way, with the investment we've made in summer youth employment all these years for young adults, flagged in the video as a struggle, young adults finding on-rows and on-ramps to be able to find careers and opportunities. The problem is we haven't thought about anything beyond job development. It's about workforce development that leads to economic security and opportunity. I want to share my screen for a second to be able to say some things to you. There we go. I want to pick up from this pocket. You heard me flag childcare, addressing the benefits cliffs that exist, industry partnerships. You've heard me flag those things. Transportation continues to be an issue. This pocket about equity index and common sets of measures means we have to hold ourselves accountable as a city for outcomes. In other words, as I noted earlier in my presentation, if the sole focus is on number of jobs and not about quality of jobs, not about whether or not pathways are available to New Yorkers who have not found success and whether that's changing, if we're not measuring how it is that where there's planned economic opportunity, the local job seekers are able to find good jobs, if we're not measuring those results, then what are we really looking at? We're simply saying more people got hired. And as you know, anybody who's in the workforce development space, a hire is not enough to secure that pathway to economic opportunity and mobility. I want to note for you just one or two other things here. So in terms of the coalition, if you stand with the coalition, this is what this means. This is part of our workforce development agenda for 2025, and we'll dig into this more deeply. We have a conference coming up in the beginning of December. We're gonna bring folks together to dig deeply into this conversation. But a couple things. First and foremost, we stand in alignment always, and we should always be standing in alignment wherever there are reductions in job training and workforce development opportunities. In the last budget cycle, there were cuts made to job training programs. East Harlem in particular, Jobs Plus programs. Those were stripped back, those were cut. That meant there are New Yorkers who were finding opportunities for job training that no longer exist. That, to our community of workforce development providers, should be unacceptable. Separately, whether it's your district offices, your libraries, your community boards, anyone in any community should have the dashboard and resources to know where job training opportunities available, where employment opportunities available. We've gotten really good in this city at hosting a lot of job fairs, but they're never connected to each other. We're not sure how one person's doing in one pocket and how they're doing in another. That needs to evolve and change. We have let down our new arrivals while we have clothed and fed. I think we should be proud of that. We have not figured out the on-ramps for their particular pathways to employment. And how we do with our newest arrivals, our new New Yorkers, is going to tell the tale of how our city succeeds probably in 2030 and beyond in securing that the labor market is at a level where folks can thrive and succeed. I want to note for you, we already flagged during the course of this conversation that who's hiring right now? It's Health and Human Services. If you are in the health and human services space, if you're in social services right now, your contracts aren't being paid on time, and you're way behind in how it is that you potentially can make payroll because the city owes you a lot of money. That's unacceptable. That needs to be fixed. That's a specific intersection with what workforce development, job development means in our city. And last but not least, this idea of economic mobility networks matters. We need to invest in saying this is a pocket. And in this pocket, we're not just going to have an event where we're going to do job training. We need to have employers at the table who are committed now and in the future to help folks who have had difficulty finding pathways and on-ramps to jobs or industry to either reskill or upskill and or find the pathways that are going to result in them being able to find jobs that exist outside of what I hear from employers. And I bet some of you have heard this too, which is, well, they can't work for my company, but they could work for our vendors. That's not good enough. We need to see better equity and opportunity in that regard. The last note I want to make here in terms of our legislative or regulatory advocacy that we're focused on, and this is significant from our perspective, we have to talk about economic impact, and we need to talk specifically, this is the highlighted section here, we have to talk about how it is that when our city is building, when there's economic development happening, whether it's at East New York or it's at Kingsbridge, we have to know that when that money is flowing into our city, that there is a fund that folks, the developers, have to kick into, that our city and state have to kick into to ensure that local job seekers in and around those communities who haven't found footholds are receiving the training and guidance and support they need to be able to access now and in the future opportunities within those job markets. That's the way that we fortify our workforce development system. Last but not least, we've got to have accountability. And on our city right now, the reality of how we do with jobs, there is data online that tells a story about how many people get hired, but we have to think about wages. We have to think about equity. The My City portal, by the way, as referenced during this conversation, has some success. Not all workforce development providers are part of that portal. We need to see that evolution. There's going to be a city council hearing on that shortly. Last but not least, in terms of the work that we do as a coalition, standing together to focus on budgetary, legislative, contractual, or compliance-related issues is what we stand together to do. We do that directly with our elected officials. We advocate and support and engage with our city government officials and our state government officials to do that. And we connect and convene with employers specifically to work to convince them that they need to open their doors in new and different ways. We certainly do that in partnership with SBS as well, to be able to evolve their work regardless of the specific industry or pathway that they are focused on. The last thing I'll note here is to just say this. We are focused on setting the workforce development agenda in New York City. And in our city right now, as a reminder, we have a citywide election in 2025. On a statewide level, it's 2026. We believe every elected that is finding their pathway, seeking higher office, needs to be committed to workforce development at the top of their agenda. At the top of their agenda, because that's the way that we ensure that the priorities that matter to us are executed on. And when I say workforce development, it don't just mean a first-time job. I mean that intersection of workforce. I mean that opportunity, career development. I mean the retention supports, the supportive services, the measurement, equity, and accountability required to make that possible. I'll pause there.
Thank you so much, Greg. I really appreciate all of that. And it's very important to keep in mind how to educate our elected officials and help everybody in our system understand some of the difficulties. I'm now going to turn to David and just ask about your reactions to our information as well. And if you want to tell us a little bit more about any of the initiatives that might help some of the clients and communities like here at POTS.
Hey, thank you so much, Christina. And thank you so much, Greg, for all that information. I would say a couple different things, right? Especially when we start talking about, the same passion when we talk about the workforce development side. One of the beautiful things about being a small business owner, right? For me personally, that's like the ultimate bet on yourself, right? You trust yourself enough that you say, hey, the things that I'm doing are going to be like, I feel like I could do the best at that and I could be able to expand, what we're doing with our own hands, right? So there's a couple different things, right? So that's why we're always talking about two different things, whether it's on the workforce side or on the business support services side out there. One of the things that will, once again, we'll highlight and we'll showcase is, like, say, for example, the First Course NYC program. It's such a fantastic program, especially when we start talking about 8 weeks of intensive pre-employment training, right? Essentially walking you through that process where you're being paid as a full-time employee to build up, that pre-employment expertise, through restaurants and through restaurant professionals out there to be able to help launch your career path when it comes to those different things. The other thing that we also wanted to highlight as well, and I know I said that in our business services presentation, is like all these support services when it comes to even starting your business, right? Whether it's through our business solution centers and getting the legal support services to help you navigate through government, or even helping you establish your business, right? I think a lot of people sometimes think it's just a transaction, right, to be able to be a business owner, but what's the context behind that, right? What are the actionable steps in order for us to stay compliant, like that we can make sure that we can focus on what we want to do best in terms of running and operating our business. One of the things that we heard a lot about was in terms of the access to capital conversations, right? And one of the things that was done last year and was announced earlier this year, last year was the launch of the Opportunity Fund, where the city of New York awarded over $85 million in different forms of working capital through loans to different individuals out there, with the lens of supporting our BIPOC businesses, our startup businesses. And because of that success, right, Mayor Adams made the announcement of the launch of the Future Funds program, the investment of $10 million to be able to help support new businesses and access to capital for those businesses who historically haven't been able to get some access to capital out there as well. We know that this is a work in progress in terms of being able to navigate through all the different resources that are out there. But, the thing that we also do, especially on top of educating the public and providing support information about what we do at SBS, we're also out there in the streets, right? So I oversee the agency's outreach team, and we activate this mobile unit called MOBI, or the Mobile Outreach Unit. And we go throughout the 5 boroughs, right? We want to make sure that we're being as visible as possible to be able to connect New Yorkers to all the different resources that are out there, whether it's the business support services or even our job seekers that are out there as well. So, as an actionable step for our partners here, definitely use us as a resource. We'd love to collaborate and find ways as to how we could amplify what SBS does, how we continue to stay as visible as possible to the public in terms of building up a call to action, right? Because the squeaky wheel is always the one that will be able to take advantage of that resource. Sometimes we're in our mad rush, we're in our own world, but we want to make sure that we're taking it and we're helping people take advantage of the different resources that are out there for people to be able to be a job seeker or as well as a business owner out there as well. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you both for your wonderful presentations today. As we've heard, New York City has a number of challenges, but we're also a place of hope and opportunity. For many, those opportunities can seem out of reach, but with some of these incredible initiatives like we talked about today, we can start bridging these gaps in communities that need it most. Here at Part of the Solution, we commit to continue to breaking the cycle of poverty in our city and work with clients to empower them to connect to as many available resources as possible to sustain transformational change in their lives. I want to thank everybody who joined us today. I really appreciate it. We will make this session available via our website, which is potsbronx.org, and through our social media at potsbronx, where you can access and share it. We'll also, I think we'll be sending out a link to those who signed up for the presentation today. So you'll be able to access it and share it with other people to let them know about these incredible initiatives by the New York City Employment Training Coalition and by the New York City Department of Small Business Services. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day.